Estamos aquí reunidas con Sigrid Nunez. Yo soy Mercedes Cebrián, su traductora al castellano, y bueno, es una emoción muy grande poder hablar con ella sobre su trilogía de novelas más recientes. En concreto vamos a hablar sobre todo de los vulnerables. Hi Sigrid, it's a pleasure to see you on screen. I would like to see you in front of a coffee, but I mean, it's okay like this.
So good to see you, Mercedes. It's been a long time. I too wish we were sitting over a cup of coffee, but this is the next best thing.
Okay, so I have lots of questions to ask you, but not only questions, but just I want to talk to you or to share with you impressions that I have about your literature, but also that most readers and many readers have told me they also have. So the first thing is that, well, we are very happy that you are getting a lot of attention in the Spanish-speaking world. Finally, this is a question of justice. You should get this attention, and now you have it.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to have it.
So I feel tempted to start speaking about the novel What Are You Going Through, which, as we know, is the novel in which the Almódovar film The Room Next Door is based, because both the novel and the movie are now on everybody's lips. But let's start with The Vulnerables, which is your most recent novel that was released in Spain and Latin America this year. And I am sure we will find time to talk about other novels too, for sure. So my first question, in fact, already links The Vulnerable with the other novel, The Friend. The link between these books is quite clear, is in that in both of them, animals have an important presence. In The Vulnerables, we have this beautiful parrot, Eureka, who lives in an apartment where our main character has to move temporarily because of the lockdown of the COVID pandemic in New York City. And then we have in The Friend a Great Dane, a big dog, that is also living in a tiny apartment in Manhattan. So both animals are co-protagonists of both stories, in fact. And I want to know more about your literary relationship with animals, and what do you want to explore when including animals in your novels?
Well, I've always loved animals like a lot of people. And when I was a child, I really loved those books about, where there is a young person, a child, and some adventure they have with an animal, or their animal is their best friend, like the Black Stallion stories. Um, and where I lived, in the housing project where I lived, you were not allowed to have any pets. We did sneak a cat in for a while, but I think that made my passion for animals even stronger when I was very young. But I never really thought to include them in my fiction because writers usually don't. And I'm not interested in the kind of story usually where the whole book is from an animal's point of view, because if you read those books, this is not the animal point of view. This is a human point of view. It is an animal in a human in animal clothing, because we don't know how animals think. But I wrote, as you know, this little book uh, called Mitz, the Marmoset of Bloomsbury, which was commissioned. Somebody wanted me to write a children's book, and then it turned into a book for adults, actually. And this is a mock biography of the pet monkey of Leonard and Virginia Woolf. And I so enjoyed writing about Mitz, the monkey, the marmoset, but also about the other animals they had, these two Cocker Spaniels. So that was such fun. Now, when I started writing The Friend, I did not know there would be a dog in it. But I got to a certain point early on where the widow of the man who has taken his life says to the narrator, please, I need to speak to you about something. And when I came to that part in the book, which is early, where I brought the two of them together, I thought, and so why does she want to speak to her? I have to think of something. And that's when I thought, I can put a dog in the story. And then the dog and its relationship to the narrator took over. So when I was writing the following book, which really does grow out of The Friend, there are all these similarities. Um, I was not going to put any animal in there. I got to a point where I have my narrator staying at an Airbnb and a cat jumps on the bed, and I thought it would be amusing to have the cat, either in reality or in her imagination, tell its own little story because it is a rescue cat. So it has its own sad story to tell. And at the time, I thought that my editor would say, we should take the little cat chapter out. It doesn't really work. But instead, she said, I love the cat. So in The Friend, the dog has a very large part. In What Are You Going Through, the cat has a tiny part, really. And nevertheless, I discovered that readers would refer sometimes to What Are You Going Through as the book about the cat or the book with the cat. They loved the cat, just like my editor. So finally, when I come to write about the vulnerables, I'm realizing that they really enjoy reading a book that includes some animal characters. So I was determined to include another animal. I chose a parrot in the vulnerables. And again, it's a very small role, yet important. And I was not at all surprised when a British newspaper in a journal reviewing the book, the headline was "The Book About the Parrot."
Mm, mm,
Again, this was not planned, but I do find a lot of joy in writing about animals, and now I realize that it's something that readers also enjoy, and I rather wish I had done this a long time ago, because you want to write about what you're passionate about, and I've always been passionate about animals.
mm. Thank you for telling us all these secrets. And I didn't know that the friend, the Great Dane in the friend was not there from the beginning. It appeared in the middle of the process of writing.
Yes.
So your books, these three books, late books, they take us to New York City and to the lives of middle class people, lower middle class, upper middle class people with their issues, very hectic lives, long journeys in public transport, loneliness, small apartments. Well, I guess, or I know that this is somehow connected with your own lifestyle or what you see around you during the day and your life. But it doesn't mean you are writing about yourself in any case, because you don't have a great day at home, as we can see now. But it's true that inevitably, when we think of the narrator of the three novels of this recent trilogy, we see she's a woman writer. She has taught creative writing at university, and she lives in New York City. So we think, maybe this person is her alter ego. And I know you have been asked this 100 times, so this will be the 101st time. But especially I want to know, apart from knowing how much of you there is in this narrator, I want to know if you will continue using her voice, because we love the narrator and we don't want to abandon her. Please give
Oh,
us more of this narrator in the
oh,
future.
this is very interesting because it is true. I feel like just speaking of these three books, for example, The Friend, What Are You Going Through, and The Vulnerables, but also some of my past work as well. There is this a parallel in the narratives. It is true that this narrator who speaks, who has so much in common with the author, I identify with her uh, very much. And when she is giving her opinions about things, her reflections on things, these are all the authors, you know. She starts speaking about a movie she saw years ago, and then she brings it into the story. Yes, I saw that movie. I didn't go see the movie while I was writing. That part is memoir, But then parallel to that and dominating that uh, is a fictional story about things that never happened. Uh, a friend commits suicide and leaves his Great Dane to the narrator. A friend says, I have a terminal illness. I want to take my own life. Will you come away and be with me? These are my ways of answering the question, what if? Which is what a novel is about largely, you know, what a fiction is about. What if this happened? How would it be? Um, okay, so without planning, just as I did not plan the animals, I did not plan that these three books, these three most recent books, would be a kind of unofficial trilogy.
Mm,
It was when I was finishing or writing the last one that I realized that I had made this trilogy. And what ties them together as a trilogy are the narrators, the animal feature. But there is a real sense of closure to the end of the vulnerables.
mm,
And I have thought, this is also how I know it's a trilogy. I know there cannot be a fourth.
mm,
You know, I closed the vulnerables, I closed the door there. Also, so more about a writer and a teacher, and you know, I would just be repeating myself. It's
mm.
not infinite material, what it
Yeah.
is like to teach literature in the US universities now, what it's like to be a writer, a woman writer, a New Yorker. And then what, another animal? A
Mm.
hamster, maybe a pet rat, a tarantula. You know, I mean, it just, it would become silly. So
Mm,
yes, so I didn't plan it. This happened. Now I am saying, for whatever I write next, it has to be very different.
mm, mm,
And yeah, yes, I don't think this narrator can come back. I don't see it. So yes. So these days I am writing short stories, and they are much more traditional narratives. They are in the third person. They do not have any autofictional elements or autobiographical elements, obvious ones at least. And I think this is why, because you know, perhaps something can happen with something close to that narrator. But as I say, this is definitely something feel I can't
mm.
keep spinning out at this point.
Okay, I am already mourning the narrator, but I accept your decision. Um, let's focus now on the vulnerables. The novel takes place mainly during the lockdown of the COVID pandemic, but of course there are lots of memories of other times that the narrator recalls, so her childhood, her university years. So there are, you know, other moments of history in the US present there. But coming back to the pandemic years, how was it for you? Was it natural for you to set the story there or then, or having in mind that the book would be published years later, because that's how it works, the industry. You cannot publish a book immediately when you have finished it. Did you have any doubts about writing a pandemic novel, or how did you feel about that?
Um, I did have some doubts, but then life moves so fast.
Mm,
If you're writing about anything contemporary, like if you write about what the internet is like,
mm,
or social media, this is always an issue. Now, in this case, I felt that I didn't really have a choice. It was, you know, What Are You Going Through came out in fall 2020. So in spring 2020, I was already trying to, you know, think what to write next. This lockdown happens, and the university where I was teaching, Boston University, we had a Zoom um, faculty reading that spring, for which I was asked to read for about 8 minutes. And I thought, this is okay, this is an assignment, an easy one. Don't read something old, write something new. And the only thing I could think of to write about in March 2020, the lockdown here began March 16th, was what was happening, exactly what was happening. And then it came to me, this sentence, it was an uncertain spring, which is the first sentence of Virginia Woolf's The Years. I thought, oh, why did I read that decades ago? And yet that came to my mind for the obvious reason. So I wrote it down, and then I just followed my line of thought. Isn't it said you must never begin a story with the weather? Well, Woolf did. And I thought, so did Dickens. And on. And then, because the only thing I was doing was going out into the empty city and walking around, and it was a beautiful spring. And there were all the flowers in the parks, which were very well kept during the lockdown. Um, and then it occurred to me, as it had before, how the flowers all have these beautiful names. Why is that? Whereas the weeds have all these ugly names, at least in English. So I started writing about that. So I had my 4 pages, my 8 minutes. And when that was over and the reading was over, I thought, I think I can go on with this. And I went on, and then I thought, well, now you've said enough about some ideas you have. Now something has to happen. And I knew all kinds of people who had been displaced because of the lockdown, who were sending frantic emails. I'm in Italy. My subtenant is leaving New York. I have a cat there. I need to find someone to help the cat. So I thought again, well, what if? And, as I say, I knew I was going to have an animal in it. And so it went on. This is, and by then, the other thing is, then I thought, it's not really a pandemic novel, it's a lockdown novel.
Mm-hmm.
And I also thought that this is the first time in my life, and I want to grab this opportunity, that I will be writing about something, an experience that I shared with the whole world. Everyone knows who reads this will have had the same experience, the same history, many of the same feelings and ideas, and I don't have to explain. So much I don't I can be so immediate in the experience. And usually, no, you don't write, about what's immediately happening. But that really, overcame any doubts that I had about publishing. This would be years from now. And then also I thought that it would be the right time to some extent to be looking back on that time that we all shared.
You are right. It is the right time. Now we are reading it and remembering that, but with your help also. So now I want to ask you about one of the most characteristic traits of your narrative, which is the frequent use of literary quotes and references. For example, in the first 3 pages of The Vulnerables, we already have references of works by Virginia Woolf at the opening, Dickens and Rilke, and there are many others that will come later. But the miracle for me of your style is that even though your novels don't exclude readers who are not particularly knowledgeable about literature or about writers and their lives, and so your readers can clearly realize that you don't write only for writers, for other writers, or for scholars. So I want you to tell us a bit more about how do you intertwine these literary works in your own novels. For me, it's like a craft. It's really something I see as a craft, as if you were like knitting something.
Well, when I write a book, I don't make outlines and I don't make plans ahead of time. As I said, I just came to a point and I thought, well, now what? Now should I? And then I thought I could put a dog in the book, because this is how I always write, not just during the lockdown. I start with something. And what are you going through? I was in a I was at a residency near San Francisco, and I was taking a walk, and I had not started the novel yet, and the sentence came to me, I went to hear a man give a talk. Completely untrue. What was I talking about? Why did that come into my head? And I thought, well, this is story promising. I have an I, one character, I have a man, another character, what talk, where, why. And so I had to answer those questions, and that's how the novel grew. So in the cases with the references, they literally occurred to me while I'm writing. What writing is thinking, as we know. So when I'm writing something and I make an observation on the part of the narrator, I will think, and that's why Rilke said, or, just like why, when I was thinking about how I needed to write something for the faculty reading, why did the first thing came to mind, the first thing that came to mind was a quote from Virginia Woolf's novel, The Years. So I wanted to be able to put those things into the book in real time because it reflects how a writer thinks, certainly how this writer thinks. And it appeals to me to share these things because I'm remembering these things because they are memorable, and they belong where they are because they wouldn't occur to me. The very fact that they occurred to me is because of something that I was talking about. And finally, the reason why I'm happy to be able to put these references in is I have my narrator. She is a writer and a teacher of literature. Well, it's not very interesting to describe someone sitting at a desk. I mean, if I were writing a book about a surgeon,
Hmm.
I would have to show a hospital, an operating room, patients. You can't just say he's a surgeon and then go on. I mean, if I was writing a book about someone who was also a surgeon, not a book about a surgeon, is what I should have said. Um, so in this case, I have a writer, I have to give her the world of a writer. I didn't want to write too much about the teaching because that doesn't interest me as much for writing, um, for fiction. And so, to make her real, to show what her consciousness is really like and what her daily life is like and where her writing comes from and her ideas come from, I feel these quotes are necessary. If you remove them, you would have a much less strong sense of who
Mm.
she is, how she thinks, and why she's doing whatever she is doing.
Also, it gives the readers an impression in that literature is something that helps you in your life. I mean,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
inspiring, and
Yes, that's very important.
mm,
That's also very important, that particularly when I'm writing about grief or loss, mourning, or trying to understand the mystery of someone taking their own life. To then think, well, this has been said about it. Someone else has thought this about it. I don't have any solutions, but
mm,
I can offer what others have thought about it in addition to what I think about it.
mhm. Also, the good thing about this technique, or I don't know how to call it, is that we also want to read those books that are present in your own book.
Yes,
So you,
yes, that also makes me very happy because when I've been asked, what do you hope will happen because of this book that you wrote, for example, I say truthfully, that this book of mine that they read will want them to read another book immediately, not necessarily one of mine, but that my book will have given them enough of something they want and need to send them to another book, because I really think people underestimate the power of reading to help people,
Mm,
uh, as an escape from immediate anxieties, as an education, for wisdom, for entertainment, for laughter, for catharsis of all kinds. I mean, people are reading less and less. We know this. Um, and I really think that it's because people don't understand, how much you can get from reading.
mm. So coming back to these quotes, one of them is by Coetzee, the Nobel Prize winner, the South African Nobel Prize winner. And I want to read it because it somehow it makes me think that you agree with it. It makes me think, in fact, of your own writing. Let's see if I am right. He writes that what comes in late life to many writers is an ideal of a simple, subdued, unornamented language and a concentration on questions of real import, even questions of life and death. I think, death flies over the three stories of this trilogy, and I wonder if you agree with this quote for your own writing, about your own
I,
writing.
I I do absolutely, and that's why again, you know, he this thing about including literary references. I mean, this comes fairly early in the book, and how could I not want to quote this when it says it says exactly how I feel and says it so well. Um, but also, it's a key to how to read the book in a sense. Like this is why a book like this would arise, because the author is at a certain point in life.
Um, Sigrid, let's go back to your style. In all of your works, you pay a lot of attention about words, and you might think, well, this is obvious because I'm a writer and this is my tool. But some writers, when they are interviewed, they speak more about the plots, the stories, but not about like the actual process of writing and the sentences, the words. And I have lots of examples in your narrative in which there are like a close reading about of words, like an analysis of the materiality of writing. Like, for example, that example you mentioned before about the names of flowers that can be also and are very often names of women, of girls, Rose, Violet, not only in English, in Spanish as well. But so you wonder if there would be a name of an ugly flower could be given to a girl as well, and that is a game you play in the actual book because one of the characters has this name, Vetch. Um, Also, there is this pun, this game in which you the narrator, uh, you use the corrector, like the automatic corrector, and it corrects your name, and it chooses another option, which would be sugar nouns or something like that.
Yes, which
Um,
really happened, of course.
okay, so you must know this is a challenge for your translators, but we really enjoy the challenge, and I want you to speak a bit more about words, about how you deal with words in your literature.
Um, it's true what you say. Language is so important to me. We have um, this feature in the New York Times Book Review every week called "By the Book," where they ask the same questions of a guest writer all the time, such as which three writers would you invite to a dinner party, this kind of thing. And one of the questions often is, can a great book be badly written, or can a badly written book be a great book, or whatever? And I and many other writers have said that this is impossible. I mean, if the it's a book is made up out of words, they need to be the best words in the right order, the right words in the best order. Um, if the language is not good and interesting and precise, above all precise, to me, there's really no reason to read it. Um, so, I've always felt that way. Now, of course, I've had I've had people I've known, mentors who feel the same. People like Susan Sontag and Elizabeth Hardwick, both of them extremely different writers from each other. But I wouldn't have any interest in writing if I weren't paying attention, extreme attention to every word and the order. Um, you take somebody like Virginia Woolf, who keeps coming up. She is quoted somewhere as saying, "All I want to do is create beautiful sentences." Now, that's not strictly true. She had other things she wanted to do with her books, but there is that overwhelming feeling. And that's why once I've gotten something down and I think, okay, now it's just a story, this story is just about finished. I really just need another day or two. And 2 weeks later, I'm still working on it. And it's because every time I read it, I want the story is there, the plot is there, everything is there, but I feel like I can make the language even better. So I suppose that just is my main concern. I don't want to write about, I want the material I'm writing about to be significant and interesting. Um, but language and style are everything to me as a writer. It's absolutely true. And I am fascinated by language. Does this maybe have something to do with growing up with as the child of immigrants, for whom English was not their native language? I don't know. I really don't know. It's possible, though, except
Mhm,
that many other writers have had the same obsession without having, a background like mine.
mhm. I'm sure in your when you were teaching creative writing, that was an important topic you addressed to the students. Mm,
It was, but there would be a lot of disagreement. I mean,
mhm,
I would say the majority of the students did not care at all about how beautiful or precise the sentences were. They had some idea and some story, some issue, often a social issue that they wanted to get down, but often they didn't know what I was talking about when I was talking about the weakness of a certain sentence. Um, I had quoted a very well-known reviewer writing about a very well-known writer without naming the writer, um, who said in the review, in many cases, the sentences sound good, but when you press on them, they fall apart. And I've kept this, you know, in mind when I write, because it is easy to do that.
mm,
You write, oh, that sounds really good, doesn't it? Then you look at it and says it's word salad, it's gobbledygook. It doesn't really say what it means. Um, but for the students, that was a very strange thing to hear, this idea of pressing on somebody's sentences. So yes, that's very challenging, because of course people don't write as well as they once did. I mean, and every year with the students, they had less preparation in language skills and in reading comprehension than the year before. So it's definitely a challenge.
mhm. I want to speak about friendship because I see it's another topic that is present in the trilogy. And I've read, and we have all read lots of novels and fiction about love, about romantic love, but not so many about friendship. So I wonder, how did you want to explore, or why did you want to explore that human bond?
I think there are a few reasons. It's true that quite a few years ago, a friend of mine, another writer, was asked to, what did he think? What subjects did he think were undertreated in American fiction? And one of the things that he picked was work. Uh,
Mm.
Everyone works pretty much. Even extremely wealthy people work. People have professions. They have jobs. But there's actually not that much of it in fiction. It's usually about something else. The person has a profession, but that's not the subject of the novel. Um, that doesn't get the great novel treatment. And the other thing he said was friendship. And so others in this conversation were saying that it was because the stakes are not as high in a friendship as they are in family and family relations and marriage and love affairs, romance. Um, and I think that that is changing because now there are more books about friendship, particularly female friendship. And then one of the most popular books of our era, Ferrante, is all about female friendship. But I think that for me, it would also have something to do with the fact that I've never been married, and I don't have children. I don't have this generational relationship as part of my life, and so for me, I think friendship uh, has even more importance than it might for somebody else. But it is true that when you think of all these novels about family, even more than marriage. You feel like that, this was the what the novel was created to be about, family. And yet there are no great classic novels about motherhood. This is another thing that strikes me. Motherhood is essential to there are so many mothers. Motherhood is so much a part of human experience, but there's no great traditional novel um about that really takes that as its whole subject that I can think of. Or if there are, there's maybe very, very few. um so perhaps we'll see that change too.
Yes, I think in the last few years, there are many, many more novels about motherhood, indeed.
Yes, and there are many memoirs about it
Mm,
too.
mm,
Yeah.
mhm. Well, another topic which is very present in your narrative, but I would say this should be present in all works by all writers, is our relationship with the passing of time, that leads writers to focus on aspects of life like childhood or fear of the future, memoirs, etc. Memories, I mean. So can you tell us a bit more how you deal with time in your works?
Well, that's another topic that I feel, comes completely natural to me when I'm writing and thinking. Time rules everything. I mean, everything that happens immediately becomes the past. And you can't bring it back. I mean, there's nothing that you can do. You can remember it, that's one thing, but you can't pull the experience back into the present no matter what, in spite of film and photography and memory. And you know, if you really look at it, that's devastating. It's sort of contrary to human desire. Yes, there are experiences you want to get over, but the point is that it means that so much of life is about loss.
Mm,
And then because time only goes in one direction, it's also completely bound up with mortality, the mortality with change, and the mortality of all things. Um, so, you are born into this humanist situation, which is so fraught, and there are so many ways your heart can be broken. Um, and then there is no reversing age. So to me, these things are bound up. The passing of time, the loss, um, the faultiness of memory, that the way you remember it does not at all mean that was the reality. So you're always living in your own reality in some way. And then the fact that we are so much what we lose and what we remember, it contributes so much to the human being that we are. You live a life, and as you go along, you have a memory of what happened in your life, which surely is distorted because that's how memory works. So the whole time you're living, you're creating the story of your life as you see it, which may not be the way it was or the way others see it. Like you're writing the novel of your life. Um, and then, there's the drama of and how will this story end? And the older you are, uh, the bigger the bigger that is that looms. Um, so yes, I think that people, um, you couldn't think about these things all the time or you would go mad, and yet this is really so pressing on human life at all times. This idea of time passing, time that cannot be brought back, and faulty memory, and the need to keep and the fact that you do forget, which is also part of the heartbreak, that the older you get, the less vivid your memories are of childhood and so on. And for some people, this is not a big thing because they don't really care that much. People who do live in the moment more, or who don't worry so much about the future. But for a lot of people, I think this is really, really an important part of their inner life.
Mhm. Anyway, I think that in your novels, even in these three novels that have death around flying over, there is hope in like people helping each other, in the possibility of a relationship, a good friendship relationship between people of different generations, like in The Vulnerables with the narrator and Veg. So this hope, are you aware of it, or it comes naturally in your writing?
I think I wouldn't I wouldn't want to write something that didn't have any humor in it. I wouldn't
Mhm.
want to write something that was so bleak that it would leave the reader with no hope. Uh, and I think that that I do find hope in human behavior. For example, the also in human ingenuity. I mean, if you think of the pandemic when it was happening and we all thought we might succumb to this disease, if it really got out of hand, and people were saying, well, there could be a vaccine, but the Salk vaccine against polio took 6 years to develop. How many people will die before that? And then what did the scientists come up with? Immediately. So I have a lot of faith in people's ability, in humanity's ability to solve the most terrible problems. Um, there's that, and there are so many smart people. There really, really are, and they've gotten us through all kinds of difficulties. but then also I was drawn to this idea that it happens a lot when people are thrown together, people who would normally not give each other the time of day or not like each other or whatever, if they're thrown together in some emergency, they bond. They bond. And, uh, you know, this particular thing where people, I knew that people during the lockdown were ending up having to share space with people they would not normally be sharing space with. And I'm sure in some cases that was not a pleasant experience. But when I tried to imagine, well, what would happen if, I'm back to that idea, what if? And I tried to put my narrator in there with the kind of person I encountered through teaching, let's say, who, you know, with whom I would sometimes clash. But I imagined that this is how it would be. That you know he wants to help her more than she wants to help him. But I thought he was that I thought this is how it would happen because this is how people happen. It is how people behave in an emergency. Yes, that some behave very badly, but you know when there is trouble, total strangers will risk their lives. And I don't mean the first responders who are trained to do that. People risk their lives to save strangers all the time. What is that? And then also, I was so taken by my octopus teacher,
Oh.
also, which is in the book, because, you know, Rousseau said, all animals fear man, and they are right. On the other hand, there are countless examples of animals, wild animals, encountering humans and liking them, wanting to being curious about them. And also, so that too, I thought there must be something deep in people that makes animals like them so much.
Mhm.
And I don't just mean dogs, which are bred to feel that way. But you know, people who live out in the woods will be befriended by a bear, by a fox. You know, so Rousseau was right, but he was also wrong. So,
Mhm.
so that gives me hope, though, actually, that exactly that animals like humans.
Sigrid, I would be talking to you for 10 hours, but I think we have to start thinking of the end of this
Oh,
conversation.
okay.
So, um, in some of our face-to-face conversations we had long ago, you recommended me books. I asked you for, to discover new authors or books I had not read. I remember once you recommended me a book by Helen MacDonald, H is for Hope, that has been translated into Spanish, H de Halcón. And I remember you also liked Javier Marias, his novels. So which contemporary writers from all over the world or poets do you appreciate and read?
Oh, I can never answer this question. I can't. I really can't. Just because. I mean, I do like when we're having conversations to recommend writers, but I feel that I read so much, and there are so many
Mhm.
of them, and you know, I feel like I'm giving too much weight in a way. On the other hand, I will say that in recent years I've been, you know, I've been very taken by the work of Garth Greenwell. That's one writer that I've written about, whose
Mhm.
work I liked, and he's on my mind right now because he has a new book out. So this is it's called Small Rain. So and then so I'm more interested in just saying something that I've read recently, so
Yes,
that
that's
I
perfect. Yes.
and that's the Garth Greenwell, all three of his books. And then, you know, I've liked some of the fiction, but not all of Rachel Cusk's fiction. But someone had recommended to me a much older book of hers called The Last Supper, which is a nonfiction book about a trip she made with her family to Italy. And so I have just started reading that as well. Um, so that's two things. I guess always with this question, I always think then afterwards, oh, I forgot to mention this
Yes,
and that. Okay.
classic.
But those are two people. Have you read any Garth Greenwell at
No,
all?
not yet. So I'll
Oh,
I'll
I
his
yes,
work.
I think that you will enjoy it. There are three books now.
Okay.
And
So,
I would start with the first book. Yeah.
so thank you very much, Sigrid, and we hope to see you soon here, like in Europe.
Oh, that would be wonderful. It's wonderful to see you, and also I would just to have the opportunity to thank you so much, because without you, all this happy news from the Spanish-speaking world would not exist. Not to mention Almodovar, of course,
Mm.
read the Spanish version of what are you going through, and so that would the room next door would not have happened without Mercedes.
It's an
So
honor for me, indeed.
yes, so I'm
Well,
so
thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.